Have you ever told yourself, "It's not worth it. Let it go. I'm better than this"? How many times have you swallowed the truth, bit your tongue, felt your own voice get stuck in your throat, just to avoid conflict? Let me tell you something you may not want to hear. Every time you do that, you betray yourself. We were raised in a culture that worships fake peace. Since childhood, we've been taught that avoiding confrontation is maturity, that being polite means being quiet when something hurts, that staying silent is noble. It's not. It's a lie. Nietzsche saw it. Clear, brutal, unapologetic. He understood that most of what we call virtue is just fear in disguise. Fear of confrontation, fear of losing love, fear of being seen as difficult, aggressive, or selfish. And here's the trap. As long as you live to please and avoid conflict, you will feed your own quiet rage. A rage with nowhere to go. A rage that becomes the prison you decorate with smiles. Nietzsche called it slave morality, a value system built by the powerless, by those who couldn't fight back. So they turned submission into a badge of honor. And the worst part, it became the norm. It became a template for goodness. So ask yourself, how many injustices have you tolerated just to keep the peace? How many times did you stay silent when you knew you should have spoken? How many times did you swallow disrespect, humiliation, offense, all in the name of harmony? This isn't about fighting everyone. It's not about being reckless. It's about reclaiming your right to exist with dignity. Because if you don't learn to face conflict, it will eat you alive. Resentment will build. And one day, it'll either explode in the worst way, or it'll rot into apathy, where being good just means being invisible. But Nietzsche offers another way, a philosophy that shows you how conflict isn't your enemy. It's your way out. If you're ready to hear what most people are too afraid to admit, stay. What you're about to learn might permanently change how you see the world and yourself. No one exposed this more brutally than Friedrich Nietzsche. In the genealogy of morals, he revealed something most people aren't ready to admit. The values you call good didn't come from nobility. They were born from weakness, from resentment, from the desperate need of the powerless to defend themselves against the strong. Picture a time when strength was law. Warriors didn't apologize for their power. They didn't shrink. They didn't hide behind politeness. They dominated. They set boundaries. They affirmed their will without shame. Their morality was alive, aggressive, radiant. Good was whatever reflected power, courage, confidence, greatness. But there were others, the weak, the resentful, those who couldn't win the game of power. They had no muscle, no leverage, just one weapon left: to flip the game. From the outside to the inside. How? By inventing a new morality. A morality of inversion, where what was once noble, strength, pride, courage, became sin, and what was once low, obedience, submission, smallness, was suddenly declared virtuous, not because it was true, but because it was necessary, a survival strategy disguised as holiness. Nietzsche called it slave morality, a value system not born from life, but from the denial of life. It glorifies passivity, calls withdrawal a virtue, calls surrender maturity. Not because it elevates you, but because it defends against the pain of being powerless. And you may think this is ancient history. It's not. It lives in you, in the phrases you heard since childhood. Don't talk back. Don't argue. Be nice. Don't cause problems. Since you were a child, you were trained to believe that confrontation is evil and submission is virtue. Every time you stay silent to avoid conflict, you're ruled by slave morality. But listen carefully. This doesn't mean you're weak by nature. It means you were conditioned to believe that being strong is wrong. You were taught that being good means being powerless. The result? A generation psychologically crippled, afraid of confrontation, afraid to rise, afraid to claim their own power. You tell yourself you're mature because you avoid conflict, when in reality, it's just fear dressed as wisdom. And the more you avoid, the stronger the slave morality grows inside you. But here's the twist. The anger you repress doesn't die. It ferments. It transforms into something worse. Resentment. And that's what we'll face in the next part. You'll understand how resentment becomes the hidden fuel of your passivity, and how it destroys your life from the inside out. Keep going. The hardest truths are still ahead. Now that you understand how slave morality wires your fear of conflict, it's time to stare directly at one of its most corrosive products: resentment. Nietzsche was a master surgeon of the soul, and few dissections were more brutal than his description of resentment. In the Genealogy of Morals, he explains, resentment is what happens when the natural impulse to act, to assert, to fight, to impose your will, is blocked. The energy doesn't disappear, it mutates. It doesn't become action, it becomes poison. The resentful person is someone who wanted to act, but didn't. Wanted to speak, but stayed silent. Wanted to defend themselves, but feared the consequences. And since the energy has nowhere to go, they turn it inward. They build a moral story to justify their passivity. I'm better because I didn't react. I'm nobler because I forgave. I'm superior because I stayed quiet. But it's all a lie. Behind that mask of moral superiority is something darker, a rage that has nowhere to go, a frustration that curdles, a silent scream the world can't hear. But you can. You know this feeling. Even if you've never named it, every time you swallow an offense, then replay it in your head for hours. That's resentment. Every time someone abuses your kindness and you don't speak, but the fury festers. That's resentment. Every time you pretend to be at peace but feel your body shake from holding back. That's resentment. Nietzsche warns, the resentful person is not just a victim. They are a collaborator in their own imprisonment. Every time you avoid conflict when it's necessary, you feed that poison. And over time, it eats you alive. Resentment creates a vicious loop. The more you avoid conflict, the more resentful you become. The more resentful you become, the less courage you have to face it. And so you shrink, slowly, quietly, into a life of self-pity and powerlessness. The tragedy? Most people get comfortable in that prison. They start to build an identity around it. They become volunteer martyrs, proud of their supposed goodness, when in reality, they are prisoners of their own fear. But Nietzsche didn't believe we were condemned to this fate. There is a way out, a path of deep transformation, and it begins with one thing: reclaiming your will to power. The ability to assert your existence without shame, without guilt, without fear. This is what will unravel next, the path back to your own strength. Until now, you've seen how slave morality and resentment build your fear of conflict. how they quietly imprison your life. But Nietzsche wasn't just a surgeon of the soul. He wasn't content with diagnosis. He sought a cure. And the key is the will to power. Wille zur Macht. A concept often misunderstood, watered down, twisted, reduced to a desire to dominate others. Dead wrong. When Nietzsche speaks of the will to power, he's describing something deeper, something sacred, the fundamental movement of life itself. Everything that lives wants to expand, to assert, to grow, to overcome. This is the will to power. It's what drives the seed to break through earth. The child to explore the unknown. The human spirit to create, to transform, to transcend. But slave morality works like a cage for that will. It whispers, don't assert yourself. Don't want too much. Don't stand out. Don't confront. Don't be dangerous. It wants you contained, tamed, small, manageable. But suppressed power doesn't disappear. It turns against you. It festers into resentment, into passivity, into self-pity. This is the root of your suffering. Reclaiming the will to power means reconnecting with the vital force you were taught to fear. It means abandoning the lie that virtue lives in submission. It means understanding that life is conflict, and that conscious confrontation is an act of self-affirmation, not mindless violence. How do you do this? First, by recognizing that fear of conflict is not a virtue. It's a wound you inherited. A wound it's now your job to heal. Second, by standing up, in small ways, every day. Learn to say no. Learn to draw boundaries. Learn to claim your right to fully exist. Third, by building the courage to face the inevitable conflicts of life. Not to destroy the other, but to stop being destroyed. The will to power isn't about oppression. It's about ending your own oppression. It's about living with integrity, with a straight spine, with a free soul. But Nietzsche knew this transformation isn't instant. It's a process, a metamorphosis. And to explain that process, he gave us one of the most powerful metaphors in all of philosophy. The metamorphosis of the spirit from the camel to the lion, and from the lion to the child. This is where the real transformation begins. Nietzsche didn't just expose the poisons of slave morality and resentment. He left us a map, a symbolic blueprint for inner liberation. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he describes the three metamorphoses of the spirit: the camel, the lion, and the child. This isn't just a metaphor, it's a survival manual for the soul. It starts with the camel. The camel is the spirit that carries the burdens of others. It bows under the weight of expectations, cultural norms, and imposed morality. You must be obedient. You must be humble. You must swallow your anger. You must avoid confrontation. The camel accepts it all. It takes pride in its own suffering. It mistakes endurance for virtue. The more it submits, the more it believes it's being good. And this is where most people live their entire lives. Maybe you recognize yourself in it, the one who absorbs everything, carries everything, quiet, heavy, resigned. But Nietzsche doesn't leave you there, because eventually, something inside the camel breaks, something revolts. It realizes it can't keep living under the weight of lies. It craves freedom. It longs to drop the load. But to do that, it has to become something else. It has to become the lion. The lion is the spirit that learns to say no. No to external expectations. No to the morality of submission. No to the roles designed to make it small. The lion embodies the awakening will to power. But listen closely. The lion doesn't fight to destroy. The lion fights for space, for a sacred territory within where it can finally exist without shame. And in this battle, the lion faces its greatest enemy, the dragon called Thou Shalt. The dragon gleams with 1,000 scales, and on each scale is written a commandment. Thou shalt be meek. Thou shalt submit. Thou shalt avoid conflict. Thou shalt not speak. And to kill that dragon, it requires something most people spend their whole lives avoiding: courage. To become the lion is to accept the price. You will face disapproving looks, criticism, rejection. You will have to confront the guilt that was wired into your nervous system since childhood. But this fight is sacred, because only when you learn to say a conscious, unapologetic no do you break the prison of submission. And then comes the final metamorphosis, the child. The child is the reborn spirit, freed from the weight of the camel, freed from the defensive rage of the lion. Now, the spirit is creative, alive, untamed, whole. The child doesn't live reacting to the world. It lives creating. It writes its own values. It chooses where to submit and where to rebel. It lives playfully, authentically, joyfully. And here's the revelation. Conflict stops being a battleground. It becomes a canvas, a space where creation happens. You're no longer fighting to defeat the other. You're standing to affirm who you are. This is the real freedom Nietzsche offers. But to get there, you must pass through fire. You must cross the desert of rejection. You must confront, once and for all, the fear that has kept you small. And that leads us to the most important question of all. How do you figure out who you actually are, beneath all these layers of fear, submission, and performance? Nietzsche offers a brutal answer. In Ecce Homo, he lays it out in the simplest, most terrifying formula. Become who you are. It's not a suggestion. It's not a poetic ideal. It's an existential command. Because becoming who you are isn't natural. It's not automatic. It's not spontaneous. It's a fight. And the first battle, you already know, is the battle against your fear of conflict. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, how much of your life has been lived for others? How often did you choose the path that made your parents proud, but killed something inside you? How often did you swallow your truth just to avoid being seen as difficult, selfish, or ungrateful? Nietzsche shows us this is the most sinister trap of existence. Most people never become who they are. They live as roles, as masks, as projections of what others expect. They spend entire lives adjusting, pleasing, performing. And there is a brutal price for this fake harmony. Every time you suppress your real will, a piece of you dies. Every time you avoid a necessary conflict, your identity dissolves a little more. Every time you say yes when you wanted to say no, you drift further from who you actually are. Nietzsche understood that fear of conflict isn't just a behavioral problem. It's an existential obstacle. Because conflict is the arena where identity is forged. It's in conflict with the world, with others, with ideas, that you discover what you truly value, what you truly believe, and what you truly want. Without conflict, there is no self-knowledge. Without self-knowledge, there is no authenticity. Without authenticity, there is no real life. Only a hollow theater, only performance, only emptiness dressed as harmony. So becoming who you are isn't some poetic aspiration. It's a war that demands the courage to face the conflicts you've spent a lifetime avoiding, saying no to the expectations others put on you, saying no to the roles that were forced onto you, saying no to your own addiction to approval. But there's something even harder. Nietzsche reminds us this path is profoundly individual. There is no blueprint, no moral script, no universal checklist for who you should become. You must create it. Your own path, your own values, your own way of being. And that's terrifying, because without the rules of the herd, you are alone. And in the beginning, it hurts. You lose applause. You lose the illusion of safety. But what you gain is something infinitely more sacred. The possibility of living in integrity. Every conflict faced with clarity becomes a step toward freedom. Every boundary you set is a declaration of sovereignty. Every time you speak your truth, even shaking, even afraid, you take a step toward yourself. Nietzsche doesn't promise comfort. He promises the possibility of being real. And that costs more than any applause the world could ever offer. But to walk that path, you first have to face an uncomfortable fact. Silence in the face of injustice, in the face of abuse, in the face of oppression, isn't virtue. It's complicity. And that's exactly what we'll face in the last part. The brutal truth that the silence you thought was kindness was actually feeding everything that keeps you small, and how to break that cycle once and for all. You've come this far. Now it's time to face the truth most people will spend their entire lives avoiding. Your silence has a price, and it's not small. How many times have you told yourself that staying quiet was the smart choice? It's not worth it. It won't change anything. Better to let it go. How many times have you swallowed disrespect, humiliation, tiny betrayals, and massive ones, all in the name of fake harmony? But here's the truth. Every time you choose silence in the face of injustice, you're not being neutral. You're reinforcing the behavior that oppresses you. You're teaching the world how to treat you. You are allowing patterns of domination, disrespect, and abuse to continue, not just in your life, but in the world. Nietzsche saw it with brutal clarity. A morality built on fear does not lead to peace. It leads to spiritual decay. When you stay silent to avoid conflict, you don't build a better life. You build a coffin for your own desire. And make no mistake, the world notices. People can feel when you're afraid to assert yourself. And the ones who prey on others, they sense it instantly. The silence you believe protects you actually exposes you. Every boundary you refuse to set is an invitation for someone to cross it. Every truth you refuse to speak is an opportunity for lies to grow. Nietzsche teaches that an authentic life requires one thing above all: courage. And courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act, even when fear is screaming. Conflict, when necessary, is not chaos. It is where integrity is secured. It is where you show the world that you have a spine, that you have values, that you have limits. So the next time you feel that familiar urge to stay silent, ask yourself, am I being wise, or am I just being a coward? That question, if asked honestly, can change your life. Becoming who you are does not happen in silent surrender. It happens in the bold, unapologetic affirmation of your own existence. It happens in necessary confrontation, in inevitable conflict. You were not born to be an eternal camel, carrying the weight of everyone else's comfort. You have the lion inside you, and the child. You have within you the strength to say no, and the creativity to build a life that is actually yours. But that demands action, and it demands that you start now. If any part of this hit something inside you, if it woke something up, I want you to comment below. I choose to stop being silent. Write it out loud. Put it into the world. Because putting it into words is the first step toward making it real. And don't stop here. Stay on the path. The next video is just as important as this one. It will help you go even deeper into this transformation you've already started. I'll see you there.